Bartenders of Reddit, what was the weirdest, craziest thing you have overheard while making someone's drink?
The first restaurant per bar I worked in, I was only serving, but I frequently was in the section right next to the bar. One day I was busy serving a large group, but the restaurant was mostly empty and a guy behind me at the bar said, "You wanna pet my parrot?" My initial reaction was the same as if a stranger had just come up behind me and touched my shoulders, but when I turned around, it really was a guy with a parrot on his shoulder. The parrot's name was Bobby, and yes, both me and the bartender pet him, tears of joy.
A married couple in their 50s arguing how they were going to explain the fact they couldn't pay the remainder of the €3 million bill for a Ferris wheel they'd ordered 18 months ago, already put $1 million deposit on, and whose collection was due at 8 a.m. the following morning.
Hon, the people are here to repossess the Ferris wheel.
That is a story I want to hear from them directly.
Customer speaking to his friend. Mate, I can't believe you couldn't get it up for her. I mean, I would have just F'd the bitch soft and use a shoehorn or something. Me. That'll be £9.
Thumbing it in.
I was a bartender for about 2 weeks, filling in for a relative who owned a bar and went on his honeymoon. I heard a guy talking to a woman about murdering her husband. I called the cops, but these patrons were gone before they showed up. This was before cameras, so I just gave my story and that was it. Not long after, my uncle calls me saying the cops are looking for me. They interview me about the couple. Apparently, the guy was a hitman for hire and the woman was trying to get some insurance money. She got busted. It was actually an episode of Forensic Files, back when that was on TV. I remember watching the episode and they said something like, the couple was overheard discussing the murder in a bar. I was kind of upset that they didn't mention me. Lol. I was hoping for, the awesome bartender overheard them, but couldn't really tell us much. He also pointed at the male in the photo lineup and asked, "Is this him?" As if he was unsure. What a f***ing dope.
We had to use forensic evidence because the eyewitness was useless.
Someone was boasting about his very small penis. Very tiny. Like micro. He proceeds to lower his pants and show it to his friend, woman shrugging.
Micro flex.
Well, his friend should have took his word for it.
One of the guys at the bar recognized me, somehow. He said he knew my mother, and dropped her name, somehow. He apparently met her at a BDSM club. Somehow.
Your mom, at her BDSM club. So anyway, here are some pictures of my kid, Jess D1. Look at the pictures, slave.
That reminds me of my aunt, she was a dominatrix long time ago. I once had to ask a woman to remove her infant from the bar top. She put them on the floor. I really don't miss bartending.
Ugh, people bringing in kids. I worked at the dirtiest punk rock bar imaginable for a bit years ago. We did some trade in food, mostly vegan stuff. One brunch this dude comes in with 2 young kids, and sits down to order brunch. We tried to warn him away, but he was adamant on staying. He complained when F the Pain Away by Peaches came on the jukebox. Like, I'm here with my kids. This is inappropriate. Yes, it is inappropriate. Where do you think you are right now?
Mom, you need to put your kid in a high chair. Now, can I offer you a kamikaze? And what'll the kid be drinking?
From a woman to her friend, I don't know about you, but I just can't poop in a pink bathroom.
Don't know if this is common, but was sitting at a bar with a band. It was noisy and crowded. Some girl comes up next to where I was sitting and tells the bartender, "Excuse me, but I just saw that guy, customer, right there, put something in that girl's drink." I didn't see the guy she pointed to. Bartender turns around and said something, I suspect a code word to somebody, and bam. Immediately all the lights go on. The manager steps on stage, stops the band, and makes the following announcement. Attention. We have a report that someone in this room possibly DGED a young lady's drink. We request that all women here immediately put down your drink and don't take another sip. We will replace your drink for free. If you are that young lady, we will notify you when you come to the bar. If anyone is feeling sick or weak, please let us know. Wow. Lights stayed on. Band remained off. For a long time, maybe an hour. Cheers from the crowd and nobody complained. Don't know what the guy did because I didn't know which guy it was. That place rocks.
Man, if I heard a bar did that, that would be my go-to bar forever. Love it.
I knew a guy that was an amazing bartender. He's get random BS drink names all the time and he'd make them perfectly. Can I get a sexy mosquito? Sure. What color? Pink. I can do pink. Combines random poo. Here you go. It's good. Yeah, I know. Just like last time. It was always hilarious.
I always thought it was funny to order something fairly well known. Old-fashioned. I've never heard of that one before. What is it? His toe was in my ass.
Red Foreman has entered the chat.
And they were roommates.
Was tending bar at my local pub. Loads of old boys used to come in and get properly razzled. One day, I am polishing glasses and they'd been day drinking and it was around 7 p.m. I hear this almighty crash and turn around, one of them has fallen off their bar stool. Total silence, then one guy just loudly declares, "Didn't spill a drop." The whole pub erupts with laughter. Guy who fell off still stands up, tips his hat, and went home. This was actually after I had clocked out and sat down at the other side of the bar for my shifty. An older couple I had served earlier had come back. Bar was right next to a theater, so we'd usually serve the same customers twice on show nights, and got dinner and were talking about what they'd ordered. She says she got the shrimp dish, and that apparently didn't sit well with her husband as he just started unloading on her in a way that had my coworker and I just shocked. Ordering the Camarones El Diablo was apparently enough for him to start griping about taking care of their granddaughter because his wife's daughter was hooked on meth and unable to do so herself. Long story short, she says, "You know what, why don't you walk back to the Airbnb and I'm going to drive home." He left, she paid, and told us this was their first night out in about a year and she had been thinking of divorcing him, and that conversation made her mind up. Watched a marriage dissolve over dinner pretty much. Edit, good God, I just woke up and this one popped off. Thanks to everyone for sharing their own experiences as well as the rewards. Luckily they were an older couple, like late 50s early 60s, so that children were also adults, but I too would be way more fed up if my parents never split. Love you guys.
That happened to me one time. Couple had been quietly arguing all night. Husband looks at wife and says, "You know what? I don't want to be married to you anymore." And he got up and left. She came back in a couple nights later and left a rather large tip to apologize for all the awkwardness. She felt the need to tell me that he had indeed left her and she was thrilled. She became a regular after that.
Man and woman is sitting at the bar. She starts crying and says, "I just want us to have something special." The guy looked her dead in the eyes and said, "We do have something special, we have sex. We are both married." 10 minutes later they are making out and she's rubbing his DK over his pants. I loved slow Wednesdays.
But were they married to each other?
That's a negative. After the makeout session I got to hear about their spouses.
30-something girl telling a 50-something dude that she'll blow him for a beer.
Hey, some women do that for free. This entrepreneur was up a beer, so who's the real blower? I mean sucker.
Yay, but if you saw them in real life you might change your opinion, lol. Also he didn't take her up on the offer. Don't blame him.
This will probably get lost and it's not something weird I heard, but definitely the most impactful. It was a bank holiday shift, but I think it was the Sunday, so everyone had partied themselves out over the weekend and the Sunday wasn't quiet, but it was quiet enough that you could have a customer on your station all night. This older guy comes in. As soon as he walks through the door he starts looking round the room, taking pictures and looking like he's being nosy. I think it's a bit odd, but I do work in a really cool bar, so it's to be expected. He comes to my station and normal conversation starts. "How's your night? What have you been up to? Where are you from?" etc. We get on to the topic that he's a gambler and a bit of a con man. I'm super into it as I love things like that. Seems pretty legit. He's showing cars he's had, starts having small fun bets with people around, not for money but just for fun and laughs. We form a good rapport. I've made him a drink that he's never had called a Slagavulin. It's a French martini but replace the vodka with Lagavulin. Blasphemous but effing great. After a while he starts talking in a regretful way, how he's screwed people over, he's wasted his life, been a bit of a DK and a not nice character. I think he's cool, has interesting stories, made my night entertaining and has entertained others around him, so I let him know. I don't know about his past, but from what I've seen he's an interesting dude and is alright by me. I remembered him for a while as being one of my favorite and most interesting customers in the 6 years that I had been a bartender, and did think how he was getting on as he wasn't from round here. Fast forward about half a year, he comes in, so I greet him and he straight away asks for the drink I made him that night. Sure enough I make it, serve it and shake his hand. He holds onto my hand with both of his and says, "I'm so glad you're in tonight, I was really hoping I'd see you." I thought he was just being nice until I realized he was starting to well up, which is when he said something along the lines of, "You saved my life. That night I came in, I was going to end my life. I came in for one drink to work up the courage and you stopped me from doing that. You listened to me and enjoyed it and I'm so thankful. Thank you. Thank you. I can't thank you enough. I really mean it. I do. And that's one of the most impactful moments I've ever had on my life." TLDR stopped someone from taking their own life without knowing, just by talking with them.
Former bartender. There were quite a few regulars I was fond of, but there was one in particular that I couldn't let my guard down around. He was off in some way, and I immediately didn't trust him. Slightly older than middle age. He introduces himself, and I get his drink, as you do, and after a bit he starts on about his life. Wife left him near a decade ago with 2 little ones to raise on his own. Must have been rough, I say. Yeah, but I've worked hard and done right by my kids. Well, cheers to that. Over time I hear him tell the same story the same way to several others, most who had heard it many times before. One evening he comes in later than usual. "Hi, how are doin'?" I say, though I can tell he is in a foul mood. No harm, happens to the best of us. He sits near enough to the well with another gent I didn't see in there much. Other gent seemed to be having lady troubles and shifty regular had all the wrong answers. In a hushed and angry tone he said he took care of his own problem 10 years ago and made sure no one would ever find the bitch.
Well, that escalated quickly.
WHAT.
First place. 2 girls were drunk as hell, dancing on a mahogany high table. Really thick-beamed and heavy. The table begins wobbling and one girl leaps off, table topples over, but her friend has her hand clasped around the edge of the table to hold on to it. The table lands with its full weight, including her own weight, on top of her hand, clipping the first joints of her index and ring finger clean off. My colleague acts quickly and picks up the detached index and ring finger and throws them into our ice machine to preserve them until an ambulance arrives. Manager proceeds to scold colleague, cause she's now rendered us entirely unable to serve any more drinks for the night and the ice machine now has to be cleaned. Second place. We've had a long night. A shift from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. Everyone's completely trashed from all the work, music and follow-up cleaning. We want to go home. Before we head out, we sit down for a beer and a rant about how miserable the previous night was. We finish our beer and we pull aside our Dr. PS covering the front door window and what do we see? Some poor guy leaning against the window. He's got his shirt off and 2 or 3 gnarly puncture wounds on his upper body. Someone had jabbed him with a broken bottle. Someone promptly exclaims, "ARHF. We're gonna have to clean that up, aren't we?" and we laugh it off. Seconds later the police fortunately rolls up to help the poor guy. They tap the bloodied window and they beckon us outside. They'll want us to testimony what we've seen and an audible sigh can be heard among all of the remaining bar staff. We're not going home yet. It wasn't until I got home, went to sleep and took shower that I realized just how much of a DK reaction we'd all had to a poor guy getting stabbed.
Sometimes when you work stupid long shifts in violent cesspools, that kind of thing gets a little normalized. You need a sense of humor about it to just cope enough to come into work again. Not saying that this behavior of getting all stabby is good, just being able to not let it affect you too much is beneficial to your psychological survival. In my old line of work in hotels you'd see some pretty messed up stuff. I had a room where 2 guys had F'd a girl to the point where the walls had blood and crap sprayed up the wall. They all left, checked out with a smile. We're looking at the room like, well, someone had a good night then. That's one of the tamer things TBH. Still, can't forget that awful smell.
Bartending on a slow night like 15 years ago. These 2 guys, one a regular, talking about the past and keeping their voices low. The regular says how he shot some guy in his street in like the 70s and just came back in the house and hid the gun in his recliner. Said when the cops were going door to door asking questions he just said he didn't know or hear anything. I was always hearing crazy poo cuz I just kept to myself unless a customer was looking to talk, and like a previous bartender stated we hear it all. Yes, we do know all about the DG. I always wondered if that victim died in that incident, but just a few short years after I overheard that convo the regular died a painful death. Maybe deserved. I witnessed a complete relationship between 2 women over the course of one night. They met early in the night. They were clearly into each other. Very flirty. They danced and drank the night away. They started making out and then disappeared for some time. Next time I saw them they were at each other's throats. No clue what happened, but it ended with one saying, "I never want to see you again." Then stormed out of the bar. After that night I never saw either of them again.
They just speedrun the entire relationship.
I am reminded of a Malcolm in the Middle episode with Francis, oldest brother, going through the same thing at Malcolm's school event.
Lots of genitalia talk at the one bar I worked at. That was more men networking doing business drinks. The weirdest was these two guys who sat at the bar instead of a table and tried to kick me out by asking if I can leave the bar area because they want to have a private conversation. How about no, I'm polishing glasses for the evening rush for a convention and I'm not standing in the middle of the effing room. I said I'll go stand at the far end of my bar and polish there. Man 1, her C******ch has a rank smell. Tried all kinds of creams and stuff. She's going to the doctor. Man 2, that's fine. Reason not to eat it. Man 1, I still F it. At least whatever yeast happening there makes it slippery. I just have to shower or smell like rotting fish. Man 2, that's effing gross dude. Man 1, F you dude. I wonder what it is. I wanted to say it's probably trichomoniasis, but also horrified that he was still having sex with her and probably contributing to making it even worse and causing some BV issues. That poor woman.
Wait, do I take the roofie or does she take the roofie?
FFS. Please tell me you told him to take it.
The female bartender and the bouncer took care of them and the girls.
You take it, but it's actually a suppository.
Too many to count. AMD. I've only been at it like 3.5 years. I've seen asterisk. We should see other people, convos, awkward Tinder meetups, regulars who come in with a different girl every time, a regular whose wife I know, come in with someone else. Another regular come in looking her husband, who was with someone else earlier that day. I got a couple now that I adore, but she is always wearing a very fancy but obvious submissive collar. I lost count of how many men my dad's age and up will ask me for my number. My most awkward to this day though was a couple who literally followed me from one bar to the next when I changed jobs, and then asked me to watch the dog for a sec while they went outside. Turns out they were breaking up after 10 years together. I still saw them each after then, but never on the same day. Like they decided ahead of time who got me when. It was worse than when my parents were separated. LMAO.
I get to go to the bar on Mondays, Thursdays and Saturdays. You can take Tuesdays, Fridays and Sundays, and then we'll alternate on Wednesdays.
Imagine getting a second family by working. Lucky life to live.
Guy by himself. Should I make it a double? Same guy by himself. Yeah, I think you should.
Yes you should. Other Barry. Yes you should.
Now that's just funny.
Ex-bartender. But my first day on my first bartending gig, I was making drinks for another customer and a gentleman I had recently served fell off his bar stool onto the ground. Just the loudest sound, the weight of a body falling on the ground. I swung around and it took me a sec to see the guy on the ground. This was a rather decent-sized busy local pub and it was during dinner time, so people just started freaking out. I ran around the bar to the man and I had my coworker call 911 while I, FYI fully trained in CPR, AED, first aid for years, tried to see what I could do to help. It took moments to figure out he was having stroke symptoms and he basically died in my arms. It was absolutely awful way to start a lot of things. It was a shock even more due to how others reacted. No one helped, instead we had people dine and dash, people mad that the poor guy collapsed and ruined their dinner, as one couple yelled at me while I'm trying to help this poor guy, just awful stuff. I found out later he was a regular. He literally had only recently come in for a nightcap from work, which he did frequently, only had a couple sips of his gin and tonic. I'll never forget it.
Used to work in hell, an Applebee's, and a man at the bar passed out due to his blood pressure meds mixing with booze. He cracked his head open on the way down and blood was just everywhere. So I'm calling 911, a hostess is trying to keep his wife calm, and a server is attending to the gentleman, basically just applying pressure to his head. He was breathing. As all this chaos is happening, a lady at a bar table starts yelling at me because they haven't been greeted yet. She said, "I know there's a lot going on, but that's no reason to give us bad service." I had no words. I walked away from her before I lost my job. You can't fix that level of selfishness.
I had a similar thing happen in the department store I used to work at. The customer I was serving just hit the floor as I turned around to get his DVDs from our counter. It sounded like a bowling ball hitting concrete. One of my colleagues yelled, "He's bleeding, call an ambulance," as this big puddle of blood pooled under his head. We had first aiders on site who helped him whilst we were waiting for an ambulance, and we blocked off the area with chairs and bins so other customers couldn't come up to the counter, and had staff redirecting people to the front tills, but they still tried. Most were okay and left the area once they saw what was going on, but there were a handful who didn't give AF at all and were pushing the chairs and bins out of the way because they wanted their shopping or swearing at us because it was too busy. One guy straight up walked through the blood puddle and then complained about the floor being sticky. He just wanted a paper but didn't want to queue at the front and couldn't understand why we couldn't serve him at the counter. We did point out to him that there was a man on the floor in front of it receiving medical attention. He just yelled, "I don't care, I'm not waiting." I kind of lost all faith in humanity after that incident. The customer had a dizzy spell and fainted. It was just unfortunate that he hit his head the way he did on the way down.
I occasionally work as a casino bartender, and we will sometimes host the Marine Corps Ball. They get rowdy and have a good time, but it's at the very end that you start seeing grown men cry. They start talking about their experiences during service with each other. The worst stories I ever overheard were from vets who served during the Vietnam War. It must have been terrible.
I worked in an open kitchen. A friend came in with a new girl and sat right in front of the line. They're having such a nice time, so happy for them. About halfway through their second bottle of wine, his date's loose-fitting shoulder-shruggy type shirt falls a little too down and her bare titty is fully out. He doesn't even notice, sitting close on the same side of the booth. It's hilarious, but like, oh snap. I get the server to go talk to them and let her know. Pretty awesome. Same server also saved a man's life after realizing he was choking to death. He left the restaurant cause he was embarrassed he was choking. She followed him and got him as he was collapsing outside. Lil 1-2 Heimlich, and she popped it out. She is still my very good friend and a total effing legend.
Greater than he left the restaurant cause he was embarrassed he was choking. She followed him and got him as he was collapsing outside. Lil 1-2 Heimlich, and she popped it out. LPT, if you're choking, don't worry about being embarrassed. That's awesome that the server noticed.
I did the Heimlich on a guest this week. Seen it twice, but first time I ever did it. I was taking the next table's order and he walked over and interrupted, and I realized and just dropped my tray and went into go mode. Only 3 tables even saw it. All happened so fast. He was fine. He made no big deal out of it at all. Asterisk, also little known, but Sonor Heimlich went a little crazy on all these other beneficial uses of the Heimlich, which were all bogus. Bad enough to the point where his children were estranged and wanted nothing to do with him. Think there is a Radiolab on it.
The craziest was when a man ordered a filet well done and refused to have it butterflied. That's like a 30-minute cook time. He ate it with ketchup. The second was 2 older guys celebrating one of them getting out of jail. Over the course of the night I learned that he was arrested for DUI when he was parked beside train tracks. The other guy asked what he did with the crack rocks that he shoved in his ass. Didn't get to hear the answer, and that he was lucky he hadn't been caught hauling the gas cans to his business partner's house.
The first one is a war crime. The second one is D-list Breaking Bad.
So we used to have this regular that would come in with his wife every Tuesday, and he'd always tip decent. And then he'd come in with his younger, hotter neighbor the next day and tip reeeeaal well. We could always hear him saying crap like, "I'll leave my wife for you," etc. She was a regular as well and constantly flirting with other guys, and she brought in her own men in on occasion. I had a regular poo himself once. He was on a bunch of meds and came in to drink. His divorce finalized and he was a mess. He shat his pants, proceeded to pay up, left to change, came back, and wanted to drink again. We had a guy faint and fall off a high chair. He'd run a marathon and instead of water, he drank beer. Had to call 911 and all that stuff. He was okay. I've heard some crazy poo too, but it's hard to remember it all. Person shrugging. Edit. Holy crap guys. Never had more than a few votes, thank you. Edit. After reading the comments, it reminded me of another time Pooty Pants Guy was at the bar in the afternoon and this lady comes in all dressed up in the beautiful, very revealing, mostly see-through green sequin dress. He started to chat her up, paid for her food and drinks, and they left together. He showed up about 30 minutes later and I told him I was surprised he came back. He said, "Yeah. We were driving to her hotel and she told me her fees. I didn't realize she was a prostitute. If I want it that bad I can just use my hand, so I dropped her off at her hotel. Also note this is at a BJ's restaurant. We don't really get prostitutes.
Oh God, you've awoken a repressed memory. My brother used to own a pub. One of the regulars came in at lunchtime as usual, sank a pint and read the paper, as usual. Before leaving, he used the bathroom and was out the door sharply after. When I went to the bathroom a little later, it appeared as though he was actually entirely made of poo, and had just spontaneously combusted in the cubicle. The entire room was covered. The amount on the ceiling was mind-boggling. He was a very mild-mannered man in his 60s that I saw every day. He stopped coming in after that, but he lived locally, so I still saw him all the time. Looking back, he must have smeared it everywhere deliberately. Whether that was a filthy protest or a psychotic break I will never know.
Did he tell you be right back, shat my pants? Or was the shat never addressed?
I've had a guy claim to be a former brigadier in the British Army and to have served with various other defense, security organizations in theaters around the world. He claimed to have committed war crimes in multiple countries, including the mercy killing of infants in Serbia, the torture and murder of some alleged rapists in Angola, and, I think, it was pretty hazy at this point, the murder of a New Zealand whistleblower to cover up war crimes in Afghanistan. He also carried about $5,000 in cash in his wallet and spoke with the most cockney rasp I've ever heard. Edit. I seem to have got some attention, so edit to add a couple of things. I'm aware he was probably full of poo, especially given the more in-depth claims he made. On the first claim, he specifically said that his unit found a bunch of parentless infants and took them to a UN base nearby where he was told the best thing for them would be to put a 9mm round in each one's head. On the second claim, he said that his unit came across a village where a bunch of outlaws had RPD'd some of the local women. He claimed that they tracked the guys down and stitched their mouths, ears, and eyes shut. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, as he said to me. I also ran into him a couple of weeks ago threatening a bartender because he lost money on the pokies.
That guy had to be bullpooting. He kills whistleblowers but talks openly to strangers? Literally makes no sense unless he was trying to die or something. Don't mean to put a damper on the story because it's interesting, so thanks for sharing, but wow, some people will say anything for attention. If he was the type of guy that powerful people would send all over the world, he wouldn't be the type of guy to brag about it.
A guy asked me to DA a girl's drink for him. I told him I would do it, took the DG from him, called the cops and gave the cops the DG when they got there. Edit. Thank you everyone for the awards and upvotes. I will be stopping replies though because I worked a 12-hour shift last night and I'm going to sleep. Have a great day everyone.
What did the he and the cops say when they got there?
IWASNT involved that much. They asked me to come in and give a statement after my shift and they did take him with them. I never saw him again though he was banned from the bar, so that is probably why.
You roofied the cops? Bold move.
I had so many extras from that guy, had to put them somewhere.
Had a guy start snapping his girlfriend's little finger because she made a comment that embarrassed him. He did it whilst looking my coworker in the eye and continuing to chat cheerfully. My coworker didn't notice, but I did and gave the signal to the doorman. That doorman, being 6 feet 6 inches, proceeded to come over and ask the guy to leave. The guy physically resisted and I saw something that forever changed my understanding of how gravity, wooden floorboards and human bodies interact. The saddest part was the girlfriend following after, even though her little finger was visibly swollen. Since your question seemed concerned with the auditory, the smothered squeak the girlfriend made, the slap his body made as it bounced, literally bounced off the floorboards, and the way the girlfriend called her abuser's name as she followed after, stand out in memory. Edit. Where I'm from, if someone were to say, he snapped his leg, it would mean the person broke their leg. This appears not to be universal though, so I'll clarify, I mean the man was bending her finger at an unnatural angle until it was at the point of breaking.
My absolute favorite, since it was rather innocent. Most things I remember are usually sexist and or violent. Two women, early 20s, dressed a bit too posh for this kind of club, just a notch away from being drunk enough to break their heels, ankles and quite possibly necks with each next step, but blonde enough to be admitted by our horny toad of a chief bouncer, stagger to the bar. Maintaining the majestic grace of two deer, albeit newborn ones taking their first steps, they managed to find 2 bar stools with minimal casualties. Then they drink. We thought after like the first drink, they'd reach the point where we could cut them off and send them home. Nope. Vodka lemon after vodka lemon, they would not get more drunk, always on the line. Gotta admit I was almost impressed, until one screamed into the other's ear, "This place sucks, let's go to Name, way cooler." Yeah, F this, I know a bouncer there, we'll get in for free. They chugged their drinks and actually managed something resembling a dignified storming off, before I could mention that Club Name would not charge an entry fee that night anyways. I was rather certain of this, since that club never charges an entry fee. I was literally working the bar at Club Name this moment. We got a good laugh and it became a running joke amongst stuff after that.
What a great story. I wonder what those people did after getting out of the club, since they were planning on traveling to your club. Which was behind them?
We actually wondered that as well while drinking after the shift. Bouncer said they went into the general direction of the only other club in walking distance, but it generally closes before the time they left. They didn't come back though. I hope they got a cab, walked home once the oxygen really kicked in.
Bartender here, 18 plus years in the business. Nothing shocks me. Like my limit of crazy would be pretty up there. Literally last night on my shift, woman with I assumed to be her son, nephew, she had called in food but it wasn't ready. We told her 30 minutes to 45, so she shows up in 15 minutes. I tell her this and she immediately throws her arms up and demands a Cosmo because she is starving and the kid is starving. Making her Cosmo, the kid comes up to the bar and overhearing the woman yell behind him, "Go ahead babe. Tell em you want it on the rocks." Kid orders a chocolate milk on the rocks asterisk. Don't do this, don't send your effing kid up to a bar, it is not cute, it's for adults, not for little kids to spin around and make a mess of my bar. I make him one. Then 2, food isn't ready still. Woman screams that the kid is now going to throw up because he is so hungry. I cannot make the food come out any faster than it is. As she is saying this her food comes out, she is handed her food quickly and as she is storming out she is screaming, "He threw up, he threw up. I hope you are happy," then left. There was a nice pile of barf on the table. Class act. Normal night.
That woman definitely gave her kid a sip of that Cosmo.
One day I had a guy that had just won a bunch of money on a horse race, like to the tune of $10,000. He was sober on arrival-ish, but kept ordering bottles of red wine, expensive Pinot if I remember right. Anyway, he seemed fine until all of a sudden I was making a drink and I heard him talking to this couple at the bar. Paraphrasing. Guy. Asterisk starts sobbing, asterisk I'm an alcoholic, nobody loves me, and aside from money I've got nothing. My life is poo, and I just want someone to hold me. Woman. Asterisk touches his shoulder, asterisk ah, I'm very sorry to hear that. You remind me so much of my son. Maybe you've had enough wine? Guy. Asterisk face changes to weird Joker smile, asterisk haha. Acting. You never suspected a thing. Woman. Oh you got me really good there. Asterisk forces a sad but caring face, asterisk. And #X200B. Anyway, guy was poo-faced, we had to have him escorted out shortly after all that. But that convo was one I'll never forget. Dude was full on crying, sobbing for at least 3 to 5 minutes before pretending it was all an act.
I overheard a woman who worked in the explaining to her date about a time that she helped a couple who had been having sex, and his DK literally fractured inside her. It's a real thing, and let me tell you that story was rough. Edit. Of course my most upvoted contribution is something about a man's broken penis.
Must have been having sex on the beach. So it was a football match day. I work in a bar close to a football stadium, and this couple were ordering drinks being normal. The dude turns to his GF and says, "If our team wins 3-0 we get to do anal." She agrees thinking it won't happen, they won 3-0.
Not a bartender, but this is a story from a friend who was in a college town, an expensive, elite college that was mostly privileged pricks. The bar she worked at was also a restaurant, so there were usually families with kids there till like 9 to 10 p.m. One night a group of college students was there drinking around like 8 p.m. and they literally took out a bag of Coke in the middle of the restaurant and were about to do lines off the table, so she came over, wiped the blow onto the floor and asked them what the F they were doing and kicked them out. Apparently there were actual children around, IDK if anyone else noticed besides her, but yeah, pretty F in bold move on their part, haha, but also not surprising, the students were always pulling stunts like that.
I work in a hotel and we had an under-19s football team staying. It was evening and they'd all had dinner and gone back to their rooms. I was in the bar serving a group of middle-aged people when a couple of the women, probably in their 40s, started screaming in excitement. One of the lads from the football team was getting changed and had forgotten to shut his curtains, so you could see in from the bar windows opposite. These women proceeded to get the other 2 women in the group to run outside with them, and they all ran out like kids at F-ing Christmas to stand on the lawn and watch this literal teenager get undressed. I told the men still in the bar that they needed to get these women back inside and that most of these lads were minors. They told them and they did not care. I had to call reception and tell them to call the adults with the team to go to all the boys' rooms and make them aware to close their windows. That one really sticks out to me because it was such disgusting behavior.
Why aren't predatory women shamed like men are? Even if they were adults, peeping toms aren't cute, it's creepy.
100%, I couldn't believe not one of them in the group saw anything wrong with what they were doing. Edited because I accidentally mixed 2 sentences together in my head for terrible wording.
Not a bartender, but while bussing a table, the man at the adjacent booth was arguing with his wife or partner for cutting the bread wrong, and ordered her to pass him her hand under the table. Heard a loud crack and her stifle a cry and saw her finger turn purple and she hid it in her sleeve. Nonchalantly went to tell my manager and then have a panic attack in the bathroom, have a history with abuse. When I came back out, manager was looking disappointedly at an empty booth with some cash left on it. F-ed up stuff.
That's terrible, skeptical smiley face.
Yep, it was real MF awful. Poor woman was wearing long everything, so I can only imagine she was covered in other bruises. She started crying as soon as he started talking and apologized profusely. I can still hear it, and it was over a year ago. God, I've been bartending for 10 years, from the most divey coke-filled bar in Brooklyn to fine dining to neighborhood bars all around NYC and Chicago. First thing that popped into my head, something I overheard that turned into a big OL fight. My buddy and I are bartending on a Friday night. It's a fairly small place, only 12 bar seats and some booths behind it, against the wall with space in between to stand. We're fairly full and the night is going well. We're busy but not rushed or overwhelmed. A group of 10 to 12 people come in. A group of 4 to 5 guys are standing at the corner of the bar and some other people in their group are seated at a booth behind them. I overhear that someone they know has recently died and they are coming from whatever memorial service they had for this person. Despite this, they're acting fairly normal for a group of people at a bar on a Friday night. Nobody is outwardly overly emotional, just a group of friends having a drink and chatting. If I hadn't overheard, there would be no indication of their situation. Then I overhear something else. A guy sitting at the bar, part of the group, mutters so quietly in a pretty loud bar. Yeah, but he was a real piece of poo though. Suddenly, one of the guys launches himself at him and they go down. Turns out, it's the deceased's brother. Fight breaks out, so I do my normal routine of turning the music off and the lights all the way up. I yell, "Y'all gotta go," and my other bartender has already printed their checks. Honestly, they were pretty great about it once we pulled the dudes apart. The shock of the lights going on always throws them off. They didn't fight us on leaving and felt pretty bad about knocking over tables and drinks onto their girlfriends. A guy at the end of the bar asked me what happened, and when I gave him the full story, he was bewildered at how much detail I knew since I had spent the past hour mainly at his end of the bar. We're always listening, folks. Also, a lot of people talking about DG. Pro tip: if you're in a bar with loud music, we can almost always hear you better than you can hear us. Most bars are smart enough to set up their sound systems in a way that their bartenders can hear guests, even if it's not super easy, so you might not be able to hear us say $12, but we can hear that Ben has the Coke. Also, even if there isn't music blaring, even if a bartender doesn't seem like they're in earshot or paying attention, most of the time they can hear you and are absolutely paying attention, because 85% of the job is basically eavesdropping. We're listening to hear how your discussion about getting another round is going, so we can pop in and say, "Well, happy hour is starting, can I get you folks another round?" Or to overhear if you're celebrating, etc. TLDR. We can all hear you discussing who has the DG, Kyle. And we know who sold M to you, too.
Bartender in downtown Memphis before the pandy. During a lunch shift, I had to listen to 2 douchebag lawyers take turns one-upping each other on who got the worst person off of charges. The only specific I recall was one of them bragging about a domestic abuser he got off after he was arrested for beating his wife and son so bad they had to go to the hospital. It was their laughing that disturbed me the most. They tipped well.
Fun fact. Lawyers have a very high rate of suicide. Unless they're sociopaths, they'll probably realize at some point and well. Edit. Obligatory. Not all sociopaths are bad people.
Okay, buckle in kids. This happened in 2002. The world was a much gentler place with worse music and a declining cinema. A man about 50 or so walks in and orders a wild turkey straight and requests Frank Sinatra be played for the next half an hour. Before I go to make the drink, I play the oldies station, which makes him happy. He tells me he's been married for 30 years and 8 days and the only thing his wife wants from him is his pension. No kids. No parents or siblings left. He snogged the first. And the second. While I was pouring the third, he tells me he has a date with his wife to watch Chicago in the theater. He tells me to make it a double. While I'm pouring it, he mumbles under his breath, "That'll be enough courage to shoot myself before having to watch that effing movie." The next weekend, the Oklahoma paper posted his obituary grimace.
Asterisk, you know, some guys just can't hold their arsenic. Asterisk.
I used to do weekend nights at my village's pub, Germany. The regulars were nice folk, just most of them have an alcohol problem and spend their pensions on beer and gambling machines. Men often wanted to impress the bar staff and waitresses, so I've heard loads of things, including how some guy bribes the local building agency for better contracts and gets refugees to work under the table for him. The politician and him then share the profits. Great, not impressed. Some regulars were gypsies, no offense meant, that's the term they used to describe themselves, and told me far too much about their D-trade and loan handling. Like, seriously guys, if you're a criminal, don't go around telling random women about your endeavors. This one at least thinks it's pathetic and stupid. Loads of affairs going on too. I never liked this. We also have this guy, who inherited millions after his wife died. Rumors were always going on about him having made her addicted to pain meds and then having her OD. He normally never got blackout or belligerent drunk, but once he was the only customer left, insisting on having a drink with me, for a generous tip. He was really off that evening and kept talking about how his kids could never find out, how he buys them cars and stuff so they will live him. Never confessed to me, but he came dangerously close that night, crying and all, saying it wasn't worth it. Think that's enough for now. Being a bartender feels allo like being a therapist. Some stories are too identifiable to tell IMO.
Already posted, but I remember another story. Had an older guy come in, probably 60s to 70s, wearing the loosest fitting, filthy pants I had ever seen. Actually had to ask him to pull them up upon arrival. He was wearing what looked like a literal pillowcase as a shirt, and he had a light odor of every bodily fluid combined. The bar I worked at the time was pretty blue-collar. Nicest people you'll meet, but it was full of laborers, garbage men and industrial workers. This man fit right in the way of, "You seem like a character, and I don't ever judge my clientele." I distinctly remember he ordered a non-alcoholic drink, like a Pepsi or something. He starts chatting away with me while I work and we get on the topic of art. He wants to show me his and pulls out a bag of paintings, sketches, etc. He's showing me all of them and telling me about them. They're pretty rudimental, but they have charm. As we start getting further down the pile, they start getting darker in theme until they depict some pretty horrid poo. He put it away after a while. Then, out of nowhere, he pulls up his shirt to reveal a very full colostomy bag, asking if he's still okay to be in the bar while wearing this. That faint odor he had was now overwhelming. I'm blown away. I can't believe I hadn't noticed it, but then again, how often do you go looking for that? I tell him it's obviously fine, but offer him the bathroom to go empty it if he needs to. I have no idea how those work, but I wanted to help the guy. He was very nice. He gets to talking about it and he reveals to me he has managed to, and this is not a joke, I'm not making this up, escape from a mental health ward over 25 kilometers from where we were, on foot. It has taken him a full day to get to me. It explains the state he's in. He apparently has intense schizophrenia, I think. I can't remember exactly what he told me it was, and he needed to get out for a bit. He tells me he made a mistake and was looking for a place to hang out and think about if he wanted to keep going. He'd been with me for about an hour and a half maybe at this point. He asked me to phone the non-emergency line so they could take him back. Unfortunately for everyone, the cops were the first to respond. They treated this generally lovely man like a threat, came in with gloves and searched him in the restaurant, pulling up his shirt, revealing his colostomy bag and dumping the contents of his travel bag on the bar. He complied to everything they asked and was very polite, but they still handcuffed him and led him out. The worst part was, they took his artwork from him. It was the only thing he asked them not to do. To this day I hope he got it back. He was so proud of it. Eventually an ambulance came to relieve the officers and he seemed in good hands, but the event was rather upsetting. This was a few years back, but I hope he's okay and getting the help he needs.
My favorite regular, like came in every damn day, was a retired anesthesiologist who also opened and sold a practice. He was legit fu rich. He was also in his late 60s and ugly as sin. He spent a lot of time in Europe. He had 2 favorite prostitutes, one in Germany and one in France. He literally went every month and spent crazy money taking them on vacations, gifts, etc. One day he brought in 3 jewelry boxes with bracelets in each. 1 sapphire, 1 emerald and a diamond tennis bracelet. He asked me to pick out which to give to whom, and since I literally knew everything about these women at this point, I went ahead and helped. Now he always drank 2 IPA drafts and never ever left a tip, literally not once. He didn't even sit down, he stood against my bar counter. That day, I didn't notice him leave after he squared his tab, it was kinda busy. He left the emerald bracelet box on top of his bill and he wrote, "For always listening without judgment, thanks for the last tip, here's yours." He passed away on his trip. He had pancreatic cancer and didn't tell anyone. I went to his funeral services wearing the bracelet. I've not worn it since, but I have it and the bill in my treasure box in my closet. I had it appraised. It wasn't that expensive, which made me laugh my ass off. Cheap bastard. I miss you, Dennis. I hope you're at peace. Edit * holy poo. Thank you for the awards. Dennis would love it, knowing people are reading about him with his vain ass self. May he rest easy. I hope to see him again one day. Seriously, I didn't even answer OP's question, lol, thank you so much. Edit * you guys. I'm literally tearing up. Thank you so much for reading our story. Thank you for all these awards. It's wild. Super crazy. I wish he was still here so I could show him this. Everyone one time. To Dennis Beer Mugs. Heard. I am going to dig the bracelet box out of my disaster of a closet and have it appraised literally today. I will absolutely post a pic of it and tell you all what the jeweler says. Thank you to everyone who told me to get a second opinion. I'm sorry about my photo. I had hundreds of requests asking to see what I look like in contrast to my description of Dennis as ugly as sin. Some people are being pretty nasty about it. It's been removed.
This is really beautiful and funny in equal measure. Rest well, Dennis.
The whole time I read this, I pictured him as Frank from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Lol, he does though. Dennis gave no FS. It took a few days before he was nice to me, and after that, well, the rest is history.
Making a custom mixed drink for a friend of the owner, overhear him talking in the guy's ear next to him. I call this date RP in a glass, you can barely tell it's liquor. Never have I so badly wanted someone off of my bar, but dude had VIP access. Told a barmaiden so that she could help me keep an eye on the creep. Didn't work there much longer. Edit, I think it's a bit off-putting that I should have to explain this, but this is not acceptable behavior, ladies and gents. Idgaff, how funny you think it is. Saying something like this is 100% enough to get you kicked out of a bar. It's immature and disgusting. Rhetoric like this is a red flag and should never be ignored by any bartender under any circumstances. In fact, it's such a red flag, anyone doing their job correctly would be up your ass for the remaining duration of the time at the venue. Yeah, I still made him the drink, but you better believe I watched him drink every last drop of it. Found out later dude also has allegations but is more or less untouchable by any attorney in town because he's so rich. TLDR, if somebody is comfortable talking like this in public, unabashedly, there is likely a reason they're so comfortable with the notion. Gotta say, I'm not surprised the internet found a way to send people to my post that think he said nothing wrong. This just means you're missing the same sociological link as this fellow and are probably more of a danger than you realize.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.